Hi, today we're talking about building a website of the dentist appointments using Django framework and Postgres database. So how to set up the Django? First, we need to make the virtual environment. So Python make a virtual environment and give it a name. You can have a dot in the beginning so that it's hidden from the normal folders. And the reason to make this is to make your project, when you start a project, you don't want it to mess up with your existing ones too much, so it's basically a virtual environment. And then just source your name of the virtual environment, being activate, so you will activate here, and to deactivate and just type deactivate. And sometimes it happens when you didn't transfer, mostly because of the set packages. Well, you can put it appended here when you were making the virtual environment too, but just in case pip wasn't installed, and then you can do python make ensure pip and then install the default pip, and it's gonna prompt you to upgrade the pip. And then we can do the python make pip install Django, which if you do pip list, it's gonna show up here. So you have installed Django. And also you can do python make Django version, so you can see which version of Django you're in at. And to start the project, you just do Django admin start project and the name of the project. It's gonna automatically create folders. So for example, this clinic clients one, it's gonna create one folder that has the exact same name, which includes the settings URLs, which are the two main folders, the files that we need to edit. And we need to, inside of the settings, we need to do some modifications. But I think it's a little bit more convenient. We also get to the app first. So Python manage the py start app dentist. So we name this app dentist. So as you can see in this folder, you have your project name and one file called manage.py and your app. So let's go to the settings first to take a look of the things that we might need to change. The first thing that you need to change is to add your apps here, because Django has its by default it has installed apps here, so you can also just add your app here, or you can create a separate array to list your apps, and then the installed apps is going to be the total of all the apps over here. This is one thing that we need to modify. The other thing would be your templates. So you can do this in both ways. You can add the base directory, where the project is pointed at, and then we will need to create a templates folder inside our app. So I'm going to show this in a minute, but let's keep going with the settings. The other thing over here is the CSS. We're going to use Bootstrap. So you can add this line, crispy template pack Bootstrap 3, which also means you have to pip install Bootstrap. Again, we're going to mention that later. And also the database, by default, it's using the SQLite. If you want to change it, you can change it to Postgres or Postgres PsychoPG 2 to be more accurate because you can see it has its own package. And then just put the name of the database, your username, your password, and the host and port number down here. You can also, the other way of doing this is to create a separate dot file, which we name it my service, and also put your password here, .mypgpass. Just to keep in mind, if you're gonna create this, to put them in your home directory, which is like the home directory where the Postgres was installed. We're gonna talk a little bit more in detail about installing Postgres too. But just to make sure these two are there, and these two files for this service one, so you put the host username, database name, port, similar as before, to put in as your service, and put it into this .pg service.conf configuration file. And the other one is the password one, so you put localhost, port number, database name, username, and password here. Okay, and let's continue with our settings. We're almost done. This is the database, and here you want to change the time zone to wherever on the world you are. And also for some CSS, you want to put a static root. If you have some static files, then you want to put the root over here. Okay, I think that's about it. The settings, if you have more questions, feel free to leave it down in the comment. And then the next thing is about setting up as you can see, I already create about 4 folders of different projects. So in each of the projects, there are some certain things that are sort of mandatory or just can make your life so much easier if you just add this there. So the first and most important thing is the model, which is by default it's gonna have this models.py where you're gonna create the relationship between different classes, which is also how you want it. The database is gonna be set up with. Views is where you define basically it's a bridge in between the model and your HTML pages, where you wanted to create like forms or any sort of functions that it can pass in the variables in this views.py file. And there are also 2 kinds of forms. If you're using in views, if you're using the functions, which is a little bit more flexible, where you can define your own variable name and then pass it down to the templates, like we said before. Or you can use this class where it has some, like by default they have some templates there, so you don't really have to create a form.py file separately, because there's a template, built-in templates that you can use. So you just name the HTML, your model name and form, then the Django itself is going to use this one. So just so you know, there are 2 ways of doing that. It depends on like your needs, and also also the template is inside of this app. Also, you create a folder, and inside the folder you create the same folder with the same name as the app, and inside of that folder then you put all your HTML files in there. Similar thing with static, the same name as the app, and then your CSS or your Bootstrap CSS. And last but not least is the URLs. So you need to, from the settings, you need to add your app's URLs over here so that it can detect the URLs here. So that in the app folder you need to create a file named urls.py and put all your HTMLs files in there. Yeah, so if you're having several projects, it might come very handy if you just sort of replace the keywords and then create the files, because these are like the basic format. Yeah, we can talk about this in another video about how you, like, when we're getting down to like the real project. And after this are all done, you need to do this one, which is really important, is to make migrations, which is to tell Django that, hey, I've made all this setups, modifications, so I want to transfer all of this to my database. So you can do this by put Python, and even after the initial setup, if you had any kind of changes, alterations, you also need to do Python manage.py make migration, and you do Python manage.py migrate to execute this. The first line is to make sure there's no errors, syntax errors and things, and the second line is to make sure, okay, everything is fine now, I just want to apply all these changes. So do Python manage.py migrate. And also you can also find out this folder here where like it's gonna have all the histories of your migrations. The first one, initial, your two models, create models, and the second one you add some fields onto the models, and so on and so forth. So you can come and check this one as well. It's also underneath the app folder. And last but not least is Python manage.py run server. So it's gonna run on this port number, and then if you open your local host at port 8000, you're gonna if you already put like the setups, your templates there, you should be able to see your web page there. Just the last thing about Django is if you have this bootstrap thing, you also need to install two pip. One is called Django Bootstrap 3, the other one is Django Forms Bootstrap. So this one is specifically for the forms, which we're gonna need because we're creating names, phone number, emails from the clients. Okay, this is about the Django part. And for the Postgres part, it's similar to MySQL in the sense that it's also relational database. So you have a client, you have server, and there are two major major steps of setting up the Postgres. First, you need to install Postgres. And to install this, we use this brew install. Well, there are also other ways, but I figured this is the easiest one if you had brew, this non-official Mac package manager. So you run brew install Postgres SQL, and this command is by default, at least as of now, it's gonna set up this Postgres SQL at 14 for you. But if for some reason it does not work, then you can remove this folder and just reinstall it again. I mean, sometimes just redo the whole thing solves like a lot of problems. As you can see, I already installed it here. So this is the package for the server, and you can do brew start services start Postgres SQL to start the server. And yes, because I already started, and so if you want to restart it, then you can put restart it. And also if you want to search like what you have, then brew search Postgres. These are going to show up all the servers that are available on your machine. And also just as a side note, there's the absolute path of where you can actually find the commands that you can use here. But just let's take a look of here first. So the one that it has been using is this 14 one here. So it might be different, but yeah, these are like the most common ones they're gonna use for the server. So, and then you create database and you put your name in there. So create database is one of the commands that you can use for your Postgres. And then I think more commonly people would also want a UI interface version of the Postgres. So you want to install this Pgadmin. I think you can find it from their official website. Just install the Mac version and initialize it to add new servers. So let's go to this Pgadmin here. So when you first go into this site, it's gonna prompt you with setting up your password first. So give a password and click on this add new server. So you need to put the name of the server. So I have named this server X, and also the host name, localhost if you're in the development mode, and the port number, and by default it's 5432. And if you just save it, you're good to go. And remember, we've already created the database called DentistDB here. So this is the database. And just a few more things that we can do for the Pgadmin. Instead of using the graphics, well, you can do the initial setups here, but if you want to do the command line, it also has this functions here, but you have to configure the path so that in your command line it's going to recognize where you'll want to use this pgadmin command line tool. It's basically one line of code, sudo make directory, and it's going to be putting this pgadmin app bin file into the command line environment, and so that then you can remember this command psql is important to initialize it, but keep in mind, like if you only do like p SQL, it's gonna give you an error, mostly because like it said, database Stella does not exist. So by default, it's gonna somehow use your username as the database name, which is not true. But the thing is, you have so there are two ways. One way is the default username is called Postgres. So if you put p SQL and then Postgres, and then you can get inside of there as a user Postgres, or otherwise, let's exit from here. You can specify like your username, put on username, stellar database name, and host name. So, and now it's gonna go into this specific database, and then you can do other commands from here as well. Another thing is like if you want just to reset the Z shell, well, like I did before, if you're trying to configure the environment, I believe it was this Z shell RC file, then somehow your command line is getting a little bit messed up, then you can always reset it back to its original default. So like I did before, so you just put path and then export path to reset the whole command line. Then I'll put the source code down in the description if you want to check it out. And as for the Postgres, so if you do the list, it's going to list all the database names here. And if you do table, and it's going to show up like all the tables that you've created before. Yep, so I've had two of them. One is called dentist client list, the other one is dentist appointment. And just so you know, actually I created these two tables from Django. Remember before we were mentioning the models.py, where you create two models. One, I call it client list, so it's this one, and the other one, which has a foreign key to that client list one, is called appointment. So that's how the two tables are generated there by default, so I don't really have to do it myself. Let's see what other things that you can use. Yes, of course, the select to show up all the elements inside of the. Yep. So this does not work because we forgot the semicolon. Similar thing with MySQL, you have to put semicolon in the end. So this is the same as what we saw from the web page, which are all the database, all the data that we've created from this create page. Yep, and if you want something a little more detailed, then you can put a plus sign in the end, and then if there's conditions, put where the schema name does not. These are like the default PG catalog and information schema. These are like the default tables. If you don't want to see them, then you can just pass them out. And yeah, I think these are all. You can like refer to the documentaries. These are the rules for like management or super user administration, for administration purpose, and also for the schema. Yeah, and then we can also quit, and also if you want to check if the server is up and running. So these are the basic setups here for our website using Postgres database and also Pgadmin, and with the Django framework. Just one last thing, if you want do the similar thing on the command line, you can also choose from the tools and using the query tools to select all the things from your table. So like this one, you've already had all these things in file, and I think this is helpful. If you have any questions, leave